Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the northeastern part of Ukraine, because very interesting details and updates are coming exactly from this area. Today the group of forces north in their official Telegram channel reported that the Russians managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Bisalovka. And as you can see, according to this map, this is the settlement of Ukraine. So the Russians are saying that during the previous 12 hours they managed to cross the border between Ukraine and the Russian Federation and to establish complete control over the settlement of Bisalovka. By the way, this is a very important village because the Ukrainians, during their attempts to attack the settlement of Tetkina, were using the village of Bisalovka to move deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. So Ukrainian routes of attack looked like as following. The Ukrainians first of all concentrated their units in the area of Iskryshchina, the settlement along the border, and then one group of forces was moving in the direction of Bisalovka and later further deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation, and another group of forces from the village of Iskryshchina was moving in the direction of the settlement of Tetkina itself, using three lines that, as you can see, move in the direction of the settlement. But now we see that the Russians managed to establish control over the village of Bisalovka, and the Ukrainians most likely lost any possibilities to attack the city of Tetkina anymore. This is very important, and now everybody has just one question: whether the Russians are planning to move further deep inside of the territory of Ukraine, or the Russians are not going to do this. They created a secure zone in the area of Bisalovka, and maybe this secure zone is enough to prevent from any attack from Ukrainian side in the future. Obviously, we're going to see this and understand this in coming days and in the very near future. But if you ask my opinion, I believe that if the Russians have a goal or plan to establish control over the city of Sumy, this cannot be achieved without control over the settlements of Vorozhba and Belopolye. So we are talking about these two settlements that are located along the railways between the city of Kiev and the city of Sumy itself. And this is the main supply arteria that Ukrainians use to support their contingent on the territory of the city of Sumy and along the defense belts in front of Russian offensive operation. So without these villages, the Russians has less chances to be successful in their offensive operation in the direction of the city of Sumy. At the same time, we got very interesting reports from the village of Kandratovka. According to information we have, the Ukrainians managed to concentrate their forces around the settlement of Kandratovka from the west, from the northwest, from the south, and from the southeast. And most likely today or upcoming hours, the Ukrainians are planning to begin their offensive operation with the purpose to restore control over this settlement as well. Kandratovka is a very important village for the armed forces of Ukraine from many perspectives. First of all, this might be another very good-looking media victory for the armed forces of Ukraine. If they can restore control over the settlement, Zelensky will be able to show the Western sponsors very good cards in his hands and very good position before negotiations. From the other side, this village is very important because the Russians using this village can continue offensive operation further in the direction of the city of Sumy. So as you can see, according to videos we've just opened, the Russians were bombing and attacking the three lines and fortifications and three forest belts around the village of Kandratovka, where most likely Ukrainians concentrated their units before offensive. And one of the episodes took place exactly along this tree line, which used to be colored in Russian favor. Now we have no doubts that the Ukrainians managed to answer this tree line. The Ukrainians most likely were attacking from this forest. They took under control this tree line. Now we see that most likely Russia's supply lines were shortened by this attack. Russians currently have some problems with logistics, we believe, and we expect that during the next 24-48 hours, the Ukrainians will continue their attempts to restore control over the settlement. As for the village of Yunakivka, we still haven't received anything. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kharkiv direction. The Russians during the previous 12 hours carried out massive drone attack on the city of Kharkiv. Lots of explosions were recorded. As for the period of time when these videos were published, we didn't have any information what kind of objects the Russians attacked, and telling the truth, I suppose that the Russians attacked another recruitment center of the armed forces of Ukraine, but right before we started making this video, we got report that the Russians attacked some military facility that Ukrainians used to support and to produce drones or something like this. So we see that the Russians continue their attacks in this area with the purpose to reduce the resistance of the armed forces of Ukraine in the area of the city of Kupyansk. As for the city of Kupyansk itself, we still haven't received anything that can confirm. We are talking about, first of all, with videos and geolocations that can confirm Russian control over the villages of Radkovka, Mirova, and Sobolevka that was taken yesterday, according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. I would like to remind you that according to the report of the Minister of Defense, the city of Kupyansk was caught in cauldron, or at least was caught in operational encirclement. We are waiting for additional details, because if this is exactly the case, most likely the Battle of Kupyansk will be finished much faster than we expected. Now let's talk about the southern Kupyansk direction, or the Lyman area. We have a lot of very interesting updates. After a very long operational pause, the Russians resumed their offensive operation in many directions. The sources reported that during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to answer the village of Glushenkova. The Russians managed to answer the village of Novomir, so this is something like a major offensive in the northern direction. Furthermore, the Russians began moving along the river of Nitrius in the southern direction from the settlement of Karpovka. All these updates were reported and provided us by the pro-Russian resources during the previous 12 hours. Furthermore, the Russians continue offensive operation in the direction of Shandrigalova from the settlement of Lipova, and according to information we have, the Russians improved their positions to the south of the settlement of Zelena Dolina. So everything looks like the Russians began their major offensive operation with the purpose to improve their positions significantly, with the purpose to establish control over the settlements of Kolodize, Zelena Dolina, Shandrigalova, Serednya, Karpovka, Glushenkova, Novomir. So the Russians, it looks like the Russians are trying to improve their positions significantly and to establish complete superiority in this area. But at the same time, the same pro-Russian resources reported about very interesting and tricky counteroffensive that was carried out by the Ukrainians. The Russians are saying that Ukrainians decided or unexpectedly launched fast lightning attack, another fast lightning attack in the direction of Redkadub. The Ukrainians managed to bypass the village of Redkadub and to take under control several strongholds, and furthermore, the pro-Russian resources reported that Ukrainians answered the settlement of Katerinovka. So it seems that the entire direction was cut by Ukrainians in two, and maybe the Ukrainians will intensify their counterattacks with the purpose now to destroy Russian positions, at least to the north of the settlement of Redkadub. We are talking about the villages of Glushenkova, Novomir, and Novomikhailovka. So something interesting is happening here right now. I believe that during this upcoming week, we're going to receive lots of very interesting updates about the battle for the city of Lyman itself. Now let's move further. As for the Siversk direction, we continue receiving reports from the area to the east of the city. The Russians, according to information we have, secured more than 50% of the settlement of Serebryanka, which is located along the river of Siversk Donetsk. So according to several pro-Russian resources, by the morning of the 7th of July, the Russians established control for over something like this. Furthermore, according to the same pro-Russian resources, the regular army of the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to enter the northeastern outskirts of the city of Siversk itself. So currently, according to information we have, the distance between first buildings and the edge positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation could be less than 300 meters. And according to the same sources, the Russians improved their positions to the south of this area and advancing along the railways in the direction of the southern city Siversk. So we see that very interesting updates are coming. Of course, we are waiting for flags. This is the only probably confirmation or only proof that we will accept, because the city of Siversk is very important. We are waiting for flags, and something tells me that first videos with first flags are going to be published in coming days. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction, more precisely in the Pokrovsk-Konstantinovka arc. First, let's talk about N32 road, where the Russians continue their offensive. The thing is that today we got a very interesting article published by the Institute for the Study of War. According to the American Institute for the Study of War, the Russian command can use the salients between Pokrovsk and Toretsk to cover Pokrovsk from the north and the northeast, or bypass the defense of Konstantinovka from the southwest. So the Institute of the Study of War for the Study of War stated that the Russians the next days are going to increase their pressure with the purpose to improve their positions along these roads of attacks. And the focal point of the Russian offensive operation in this area is the city of Dobropolye. And the Russians are going to shorten the distance as much as possible exactly to this settlement. This will allow the Russians to cut the Ukrainians in the city of Pokrovsk in Cauldron. As for the previous 24 hours, we have some confirmations from different sources about Russian progress on the ground in the area of the settlement of Koptiva. Furthermore, we have this video published by the Ukrainian sources. We will not open and watch this video due to casualties, but based on this video, we managed to geolocate the edge positions of the armed force of the Russian Federation right to the northeast of the settlement of Novoeconomichne. And based on this video, most of the mappers this morning adjusted their maps in Russian favor. So this is the situation by the end of the 6th of July, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 7th of July of 2025. Furthermore, several pro-Russian reliable resources made their own analysis regarding the situation around the Pokrovsk agglomeration, and according to them, by the morning of the 7th of July of 2025, the armed force of the Russian Federation managed to enter the southern part of Novoeconomichne and the southern part of the settlement of Nikolaevka. And according to these reliable resources, by the morning of the 7th of July of 2025, the Russians have already secured and established complete control over everything along this red line. So everything to the east or to the south of this red line is already under complete Russian control. Obviously, this is significant progress of the armed force of the Russian Federation. We are waiting for additional details. We are waiting that the Russians will enter the settlement of Novoeconomichne from the north also in coming hours, maybe in coming days, and this will allow the Russians to create a pincers, and then they will attack the central part of Novoeconomichne and the industrial zone to the west of Novoeconomichne. We're talking about this mine and its elevations around from the north and from the south. Once again, if Ukrainians lose Novoeconomichne, this is going to be the beginning of complete collapse of the city of Pokrovsk itself. The settlement of Novoeconomichne for the city of Pokrovsk is the same as the city of Solidar for the city of Bakhmut. The fall of Bakhmut started with collapse of Ukrainian defense in the city of Solidar. The fall of the Pokrovsk agglomeration will begin from collapse of the Novoeconomichne defense. Now let's move further. At the same time, the Russians increases their pressure in the southern part of the city of Pokrovsk. We continue receiving videos of how the Russians were bombing and attacking this territory with aviation and with FABs, trying to reduce the defense capabilities of Ukrainians in this area as well. So maybe, and as we discussed during the previous videos, the Russians are going to launch a support attack in the southern part of the city of Pokrovsk with the purpose to pin down Ukrainian reserves and not allow the Ukrainians to redeploy additional forces in the northeastern and in the eastern direction. At the same time, the Russians are trying to check Ukrainian defense on the line towards the settlement of Shakhova. It's the same N32 direction. During the previous 24 hours, this territory was under very heavy fire from the Russian aviation and artillery. It seems and it looks like something like artillery preparation. Maybe upcoming hours or more days, we're gonna get some changes on the ground in this direction as well. We're talking about, first of all, about the settlements of Popy Yar, Poltavka, and Volodymyrovka and Shakhovo itself. So this is already a major battle of the summer of 2025, and maybe of the entire 2025. And the major battle is the battle for this, let's say, defense line, for this pocket. Nikolaevka, Novoeconomichne, Razina, Fedorovka, Novotoretska, Boykovka, Mayak, Pankovka, Volodymyrovka, and Shakhovo. So this line is the focal point of the major offensive operation. If Ukrainians can hold their lines and can hold their defense in this area, then the Russian major battle will fail. And if the Russians establish control over this territory, we can start counting days before the cities of Pokrovsk, Dobropolye, Konstantinovka, Drushkovka, Alexeyevka, Drushkovka will fall. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Dnipropetrovsk direction. As usually these days, we have lots of icons and lots of videos and changes on the ground. The most important video is coming from the village of Tolstoi. This video was published by the Ukrainian sources, and in this video we can see a close combat between Ukrainians and the Russians. The Ukrainians sent a convoy of tanks in the direction of the settlement of Tolstoi with the purpose to attack Russian positions with tanks and with heavy strikes, and this video confirms the presence of the Russian Federation on the territory of this village. Based on this video and based on some reports that were published by neutral mappers, we adjusted the map, and for example, this is the situation by the end of the 6th of July. As you can see, just yesterday the Russians secured the settlement of Pidubne. We have video that confirm this, and today we have report that the Russians entered the settlement and secured the eastern part. Neutral mappers improved their positions further. At the same time, as you can see, the Ukrainians carry out a successful counter-attack in the direction of Yalta and in the direction of the settlement of Dachne, and as a result of this counter-attack, the Ukrainians managed to enter the village of Dachne itself and to raise a flag. In this video, we can see how Ukrainians entered the most northwestern part of the settlement, and they raised their flag in this area, not their flag, but the flag of their brigade, of their 35th Marine Brigade, and then they retreat from this area, or maybe took more advantageous positions. So anyway, based on this video, we came to conclusion that the territory or the area between the villages of Zorka, Yalta, Dachna, and Filia Novopolye is under complete Ukrainian control. At the same time, the Russians continue their offensive with the purpose to encircle the settlement of Mirna from the south and from the north. And most likely the Russians are about to create another encirclement, and most likely these coming hours the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this area through the fields in the direction of Alexandergrad. But the main problem for the Ukrainians is that the tree lines and let's say roads in the fields are already under complete Russian FPV drone control. And for example, in this video we can see another attempt of the armored forces of Ukraine to retreat from the settlement of Mirne during the daylight, but the Russians managed to get this vehicle and to attack this vehicle with FPV drone. So this is the situation. Ukrainians currently have no chances for evacuation from the settlement without losses. And at the same time, the Russians intensify their attacks in the direction of Voskresenka. So we are going to have lots of changes in this area in coming days, and obviously during this upcoming week. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.